Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sparring Partners. And I'm Monica Paolini from Sense of Healy, and your host. And my guest today is Mario Di Dio. He's the general manager of network at Nova Labs. Mario, thanks for being with us today.
Oh, thank you, Monica. It's great to be here. Appreciate you inviting us.
And I think you are the first Italian on the podcast. So you got this honor. We're both Italians, but we will not speak in Italian.
No, we will
And
not.
in fact, what we're going to talk about today is three things: is Wi-Fi, cryptocurrencies, and the cellular access new models. So it's a lot to cover. So before we get into all those topics, Mario, why don't you tell us who you are and where you're coming from? Because that's going to explain a lot of what we're going to be talking about because it's all very relevant. So tell us.
Oh. Well, so my name is Mario, like you said, and I originally came from Italy, actually, like you said, in the US. Been in the telco industry for about 15 years or so, and primarily prior to landing in Nova Labs, I've been doing a lot of work both in the into the 4G, 5G with a startups called Artemis Networks, but mostly then I worked on a very good, renowned place called Cable Labs, working together with the global industry as a whole to develop wireless technologies for their industry. And that's where I came into knowledge of helium through another colleague. His name is Joey Padden that was working on in there, and now here I am at Nova Labs. So I'm very new to the world of cryptocurrency or blockchain, for that matters. I think there are some very cool things that we're going to touch on. By my heart and soul are rooted into telco for both, Wi-Fi and I love it all. Like I know that we're going to talk a lot about Wi-Fi, but I'm really big fan of network convergence. I've always been a strong advocate, and I think that's where the future will lie in terms of communication and connectivity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's in fact, as I said, like you talk about Wi-Fi and cellular model, I mean, and the connectivity models and new models, business models, because I think that we do need new business models. And people have been trying them in the past, but we never really got there. But really, the fact is that today access is absolutely across different technologies. 80% is cellular, about Wi-Fi, 20% is cellular, but very different. And the thing is that if you don't have the two of them working together, we're not going anywhere. So it's having multiple access technologies is not an option, is it the reality and necessity? The question is how to get them to work together better. That's where we can
Yeah,
big.
absolutely. And I think that this is something that the industry as a whole has been kind of steadily working towards, but also I think the reality that where we live in is gonna push the industry to do better and more in that direction. And in our own little universe, we're doing the same. We're trying to push the forward with helium as well. But I really believe in the future where connectivity should be a problem for the service provider, but not a problem for the user. And I think all the different type of frictions that the user sees, that it might not be that necessarily that big, like just inserting your Wi-Fi password or other things. That in general, this will disappear and it will become more seamless because the service provider really wants to get the best user experience for the user. And and I think that's the need is even more now because the data keeps going more higher and higher. We have more data transfer than ever, and as you say, like 80% is Wi-Fi, 20% is cellular. That transition between these two technologies needs to be as smooth as possible. And really, we wanted to unburden the user to learn to know where they are on which axis they know. In the future, I don't even want to see the Wi-Fi or the LTE icon on the phone. I just want to see I'm connected. And you see some of those early experiments with like satellite direct to phone with Starlink and others doing that. So there is multiple access, and the job of the industry is to make sure that the user will always best connected to put what they are doing to the best access. So in our little world, we try to do the same with Helium in many ways.
So what is Ilium? A lot of people might not know what it is in the first place.
Absolutely, absolutely. Happy to. So Helium is, I mean, actually started a long time ago, way before I came with the company, and about 13 years ago, I believe. And was this attempt to change the infrastructure model, so who owns the network, from a centralized one, which is what we usually have with like few companies, renting out space, putting up towers and things like that, from that type of model into a model that let's call it decentralized, in which the ownership of the network, instead of being in the hands of a few, is in the hands of many. And Helium was the first one trying to use blockchain as an underlying mechanism to effectively monitor and govern a decentralized network. They started with IoT. That's the Helium IoT network. It was based on LoRa. One grew like wildfire in 2019 to 2021, all the way to 1 million hotspots globally, and it is still there. And then about 3 years ago, I started to tackle the mobile use case. And into the mobile use case now, we did start with CBRS and then landed also on Wi-Fi. Now very focused on Wi-Fi, but the basic of what is the same. It's this idea that rather than having few companies owning the access where the radios are, people like shopping mall owners, coffee shop owners, venue manager, people that have access to space to provide connectivity, can decide to be part of the telco industry and provide connectivity for others. So it is a little bit of a sharing economy, if you wish, model on top of the telco industry, with the blockchain being these like model and mechanism to govern a network which is owned by many.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really important because we have different access technologies we want to use, but I think what you're talking about is the value of real estate, which is not the same across any country or the globe or whatever. So there is a lot of value in some locations. And that's something that there is a way to extract value from that.
100%. Yes. I mean, like if you look alone at just at the reports from the three big carriers in the States last year, just in site leasing, I think we were looking at $15 billion or something like that, just in site leasing. And of course, those are big towers. They're like more of a macro cell. But if you look even on a microcosm, like shopping malls and coffee shops, those are all opportunities, especially for indoor coverage. There is also play for outdoor in certain places where capacities are constrained. But if we look at the coverage side, there is a lot of smaller footprint areas, coffee shops and shopping malls, and in which there is actually a lot of traffic. And usually connectivity might not be optimal. And a solution like Helium can improve that coverage instantaneously, not only for the carriers, but also for the owner of the business. And so, yes, it is a value of the real estate, and the attached and how much that value can be translated in the better business for the owner, the operator of the business. So yeah, it's one way of putting it for sure.
Okay, so before we get to blockchain, let's talk about the Wi-Fi part and the business model, and then we understand how blockchain comes into this.
So the model is pretty simple. So I'll give you an example. So Nova Labs, we do actually have an MVNO in the States. It's called Helium Mobile. You can check out our website, hellohelium.com. It's a $20 a month, unlimited data, text, and calls, which is a very compelling proposition and price-wise. And there is a reason for it. And the reason is this model. So the traditional MVNO model, you do work together with a partner, in our case is T-Mobile, and you effectively pay them for access the network for you, for the subscriber. Now, what we did at Helium, we created this like hybrid model where the coverage for the Helium mobile subscriber comes not only from our T-Mobile partnership, but also from the Helium network, which means that if you, Monica, you are a coffee shop owner and you decide to install a little device, we call it Helium mobile hotspot. I know that a lot of the audience here would probably know about Wi-Fi passpoint. We could talk about that, but the way you want to think of as a coffee shop owner, which is not like necessarily techie, is like a mini cell tower. So you're putting in your own shop one of these devices. Actually, I have it right behind me. And you put it in your coffee shop on the moment that Helium mobile subscriber enters your coverage area, will automatically connect to the hotspot, and at that point, Helium mobile, instead of paying our roaming partner, he actually pays you for the amount of traffic that Helium mobile subscriber is doing on the Wi-Fi on your Helium mobile hotspot. And that settlement of data transfer, it actually uses the blockchain as the mechanism for doing the settlement between. So they, instead of being in regular USD dollars, happens in cryptocurrency, which is Helium Network Token, the HNT token. And that's what it gets you. So the model is effectively that the more of the Helium network is out there, and of course that cost is much less than what an MVNO would pay T-Mobile. So the model is the more Helium network is out there, the less is the cost for the service provider, for the carrier to offer the service, the lower is the price point. So the reason why we can offer the $20 plan, and we have very cool things in the future. I don't want to spoil the future of my colleague Coco that runs the MVNO, but we have even more cool stuff happening. But the basic model is that we lower the cost to serve, and so the price will go lower. And this way we created an edge for people to get great connectivity with cheaper prices.
Now, we've seen many times in the past similar attempts. So there was, I think it was BT was probably the first one, right? Where so they would just be saying, you just share access. I get into your Wi-Fi, you get into mine. So there was a kind of community sharing. It sort of worked, but not quite. But they still have sharing. And then, Comcast has this kind of like, you do it unless you opt out. So there have been already attempts, but never really quite worked. Or not from a technical point of view, from a sort of adoption point of view. And I guess that part of the reason is that wherever you go, you get free Wi-Fi access. So why should I care?
It's a great question.
So how do you position yourself with all these previous attempts and current attempts?
Very, very important question. I hope to have a good answer as the question. So look, it is true that we've seen this in the past, but like you already start mentioning some of the key differentiators. The first thing is that, let's say the companies that you mentioned, BT, Comcast, and others, they do that, but there is really no incentive for the person or the business on the receiving end to do that, to actually share that access. So that is something that in our model is different. Another thing that is actually very important to notice is that in this case, in previous attempts, it was almost like it was painting with a very broad paintbrush, with a very broad paintbrush. That's why you see those millions of access points and blah blah blah. But really, when you look at the statistic of where the traffic needs to happen, where the coverage is bad, it's actually a subset. And so one thing that actually is very different with Helium is that for every carrier that wants to use the network, let's say Helium Mobile, I will talk about other carriers because another thing that we've done and we'll probably touch is other carriers using the Helium network. But let's stick for Helium Mobile for a second. Let's say Helium Mobile is a cohort of subscribers in a specific area and it wants to lower the cost to serve. Helium Mobile can decide I want coverage in this specific neighborhood in New York City or this specific neighborhood in Dallas, that gets signaled to the we call the builder community. So people that buy the hotspot and install the hotspot, and it gets put in a map for everybody to look at. And the community at that point knows that a carrier, in this case Helium Mobile, is interested into offloading data in a specific geographic area. Then they go out, they go talk to those business owners, they do their own business arrangements, and they create coverage for where there wasn't one, or there wasn't as good, or because they, from a point of view of cost to serve, it made more sense to use Wi-Fi than use the other network. So this, we call it this point and shoot mechanism, and it's something that every carrier that participates into the Helium network, let's talk about Helium Mobile in a second, I'll talk about the other carriers, we create tooling for them to do that, to basically tell me where you think you need more coverage, and will make, and the community will make it happen. So this point and shoot mechanism is very different than what we've seen before with previous attempts, which is more like, before it was more like, oh, I happen to have access point there, let's turn it on. If they, and not only that, let's turn it on either with we don't tell the host, or if we tell him, there is nothing for him to do or for her to gain from this. So this is a very different situation in which a carrier actually say, I need coverage here, and the community builds it. And we've done this successfully in the US, in Mexico with Telefonica, and again, we probably touch on it later, but that's a very big differentiator. The second differentiation is that compared to previous attempts, every time you offload on Wi-Fi, we actually carry a lot of metrics on quality of service for the Wi-Fi hotspot that is serving the user. We're working on more metrics on the Wi-Fi access side, and those metrics will actually get bubbled up to the carrier. So the carrier now is not just a pure offload, I don't even know what the experience looks like type of offload. Is a very, it's a very aware way of doing, is a network aware offload. And a quality aware offload, so that the carriers knows where the user are, where they are connecting, what is the quality of experience and the quality of service. So these two things, the point and shoot plus the quality of service, I think they're a very key differentiator compared to previous attempts.
So if I am an operator, I'm doing some offload, and I see there are two hotspots there. One is very good quality, the other one is kind of not so good. Do I pay more, and how is the price adjusted? Because the performance of the second hotspot might not be very good today because it's congested, because there is not capacity,
Right.
but tomorrow is good. So is there a way to have real-time pricing in terms of, this is what I'm getting?
That's a
Or
great.
I just want to have that, it has to be at least that much, otherwise I don't care.
Well, so the way that great, and today the way the blockchain incentive works is that there are some threshold, like you say, it has to be at least this much for you to earn from the blockchain, and you earn more if your quality of experience is, the highest tier. In terms of carrier choosing, right now, I think we don't have real-time prices necessarily. I think it's something that might actually happen in the future. But what a very good first step would be, like you said, we bubble up these real-time metrics, and the carrier says, well, today I'm not offloading Monica on this access point, I'm offloading in here. Tomorrow, if that access point is actually in a good and a better, or maybe sometimes it's about like time of the day, right? Like, a bar at night versus a bar in the morning, or a coffee shop in the morning versus a coffee shop in the afternoon. So there are places in which you might want to offload a certain time of the day and not others because of quality of service. So right now it's more of it's less the real-time prices on a gigabyte. It's more on, do I choose to offload here or not on a real-time basis? That will be already great. Very innovative, very forefront that we are experimenting with already.
Yeah, which is actually very interesting, because as an operator, I'm going to say, well, I want to have that kind of level of performance. But if that's already above what my cellular network does, so you might want to have a certain performance. But if your cellular network is really doing badly, then you might be willing to take even,
Correct.
you know what I'm saying? Like that, it changes from an operator point of view. What is that you want to offload?
Yeah, and we do see already some of the operators that work together with us. They do have tooling for evaluating based on their cellular capacity if they offload or not in certain area. They actually already have that, which is
Yeah.
now what we're doing. What we're working together is adding this quality of service metrics from the Wi-Fi. So now you have like this bird eye view of both your cellular assets and your roaming assets, and again, at that point, you can make real-time decision. And you might even have, again, not that it's been the case yet, but you may even have different pricing, different type of quality of experience, depending on the people what they're doing, different plan prices, different. You can use that as a differentiator in many ways. You can, I mean, this, you know, the industry likes to talk a lot about network slicing, which it's perfectly good reason, and there is a lot of good things happening. But I think the ultimate network slicing is not on the network access slicing. It's about the quality of experience of what the user is doing. So it's the network slicing for the user is doing. If I'm doing a video call, I need to make sure that the video call goes smooth. And if that means using Wi-Fi, cellular, Starlink likely not in that case, but whatever. I'm just saying the access needs to be agnostic. It's about what the user is doing. So the pure network slicing cuts across the different network to find you the best access.
And as you say, the issue is that you need to know what the performance is. You need transparency, which every time I talk to an operator, their main complaint about Wi-Fi, it's not whether it works or it doesn't, is that they don't have visibility.
Correct.
I mean, because they don't care. I mean, so in the same way that you were talking, users don't care what technology they're using as long as it's good. You can do this, you can actually say the same about an operator. As long as their subscribers are happy, they don't care if it's Wi-Fi or cellular,
Right.
as long as their subscribers are happy. So it sort of goes both ways. The question is that if you don't know what's going on in Wi-Fi, then you kind of might say, well, I'm not gonna touch it.
Yeah, because the risk that you might encounter is that someone goes on the Wi-Fi, and especially if it is automatic, which is like one of the greater things, like, oh, you don't need a password, which is great, but you better know what you're doing, because if the user then he gets a very poor user experience, then and me as a user, I've been onboarded into Wi-Fi without me touching anything. The person I'm going to complain on to is my service provider, and the possible churn that might come up from user experience. So every time I hear seamless offloading, is seamless onboarding, I think we should all think of as, okay, seamless onboarding is good, but it needs to come with a quality of experience attached to it. Because if you're seamlessly onboarding in something that doesn't perform, then it's really not a great thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, now let's get to the blockchain. So
Yeah.
how does that help in this whole thing about providing not just access, but metrics?
Okay, so the blockchain, I think when I look at blockchain again, I like in two things. There's two things I would love to people to remember, if you have to, if anything, about why we use the blockchain. The first one is, like I mentioned before, is a settlement layer. So it's a layer in which, on one end, the devices are accounting the amount of gigabyte, and then at a certain point, a carrier, Helium Mobile or some other carrier using the network, needs to pay out the hotspot owner. And in this way, when you have like 4,000 or 5,000 different hosts, doing it in a traditional way might be really complex, and it also it's yeah, it is basically just very complex. And you can use the blockchain as this role of taking that settlement information and settle that. And we use the blockchain as a ledger for that to be visible and transparent and traceable, so you can see the history. If you go onto our Helium mobile planner, Helium coverage planner, you can see all the different history of all the different hotspots. And this is possible to be done easily and at scale because of blockchain. So I guess that's the first. So scalability for settlement. It's a scalable way of settlement with thousands and thousands of different hosts. The second part of blockchain is these metrics. So the ability for a device like a mobile hotspot to sign in a trusted way this quality of experience metric, and then those quality of experience metric exist on the device, on the blockchain, on the device representation on chain. There is every hotspot gets attached to what in the blockchain world they call it NFT, which some people associate more with images. But NFT is really, you want to think of it like a blob of information that lives on chain. And that blob can be updated. The metadata can be updated. So those metadata are those quality of experience metrics. And now they live in a transparent and immutable way on the blockchain. So there is a level of trust that the blockchain brings into the picture, because now the only way for those metrics to be exist there is if they are signed, if they are put together and transmitted to the blockchain by the device. So there is no way to modify or changing or like make it appear different than what they are. So the immutability part of the blockchain for the quality of metrics enhance the trust of the carriers into the network, because there is no, I don't have just to believe someone that tells me that there is an actual measurement that happens, and the measurement gets signed by a blockchain transaction, and that transaction ends up on chain in the blob, in the NFT representing the hotspot on chain.
Okay, so let's make sure, because initially when I saw it, and actually I was looking at the website, it looks like you can just use blockchain and cryptocurrency for everything. But I think that what you're talking about is that the blockchain part is to track the performance and the settlements.
Correct.
When you are sharing, not on, if I have a subscriber and I subscribe, it's not blockchain only, because that then it could have, people could say, well, isn't there a security or a security issue? Because then if I can sign in with my blockchain account and nobody knows who I am and I have a cell phone number, I mean, that could be seen as a security, but that's not what you're talking about here.
No, actually, as a matter of fact, is the reverse, is making sure that every time those metrics are collected, they're actually done in respect of all the privacy laws, depending on the country, so and things like that. So the subscribers on the MVNO, you have to have, your account, your credit card, and everything in there. It's just that somewhere in the network, there is an association between a subscriber and an NFT on the network. So everybody is mapped, but there is always the lookup table is always available for everybody to go back and look into it. One more thing I wanted to say about the blockchain component, which we haven't talked about it, is that one very cool thing compared also why this is very different than the past. So we talk about Helium Mobile decide where to suit the point and shoot mechanism, and we talk about the metrics. The subscriber are actually part of the game as well. What I mean is, if you choose so, you as a Helium Mobile subscriber, you can decide to share your location information with Helium Mobile, which is something that many carriers do without asking for that. And but if you decide to opt into sharing your location information with a Helium network, we call this mechanism discovery mapping. What discovery mapping is the ability for the user to periodically send their location as they move around doing their own thing. Then what happens, the network now aggregates all this information. It makes it available for the carrier, for the Helium Mobile, to decide where do I need coverage and how people are using, where they are congregating the most. And because the subscribers are doing work, they're also getting rewarded by the Helium network into tokens. So you as a subscriber, not only you access to a service, you can earn a cryptocurrency token from the chain if you help the network. And your way of helping is sharing your location information, if you decide to do so.
Actually, that's a good way, because I think that when it comes to privacy and sharing data, as an operator, whether you're MVNO or not, you have a lot of data from users, like like us privately, and that data is incredibly valuable. But on the other hand, it's my data, it's your data at a personal level, and I say, okay, if I share it, I want to be compensated in some ways. It just seems it should be done with consent, transparency, and then I should be rewarded for it. Which right now we're not. Uh,
I mean,
you have to
unfortunately,
actually work very
it's
hard.
wiser of me to stick to what we do. We do it that way. So we do it with consent. We consent. We people decide to join, decide to opt in into this, and like you say, they get they earn because of their work. They earn cryptocurrency allocation from the chain because they are decided to do that, and that is something that I would say again is not the norm in a lot of part of our industry when it
Yeah,
comes.
no, that this is very interesting because you kind of set up a sort of a conceptual model. It's a business model, but it's also a conceptual model of how to deal with it. Which I think that we need to really start as a society. It's not just mm, mobile operators doing this, but as a society, to try to this is my data. How do I have some level of control of who uses it, how?
Mhm.
How can
Yeah,
I stop? How can I, if it's a value, I mean, I should share in the value, that
yeah,
seems like,
yeah. We're fairly convinced, and especially our my CEO is also all of us, and he's the first one sending the vision that data privacy is very important. It's paramount, and this is. But on the other end, what we find is that just like in life, when you ask for help, people usually give it. If you ask in the right way, and if you are transparent about what you're gonna do, there is many people decide to opt in discovery mapping. We have thousands and thousands of people in discovery mapping because it just makes sense for them. It's like, okay, well, I'll share my location. I'll do the discovery mapping. You'll make the service better because then I can say the closed loop, right? Then gets into the hands of the network. The network puts it out on a map, and then people create coverage where maybe coverage that wasn't as good before, and so it's for the better, and the plans goes down. So there is like this very nice virtuous cycle that involves subscriber and builders that is very different from anything that has been done before, especially this closed loop between subscribers and builders. And it's pretty interesting to
yeah,
look at.
and I think that the crucial thing is that you set the right incentives for everybody involved. Because
Right.
if you don't, then you have a sort of a imbalance. And so if I feel like you're taking advantage of me, I'm going to block you at any corner wherever I can.
Mhm.
Right.
And also it foster like a feeling of community. Like, and I know maybe I understand that once you get to like, but well, we have already even in the millions, but it really at the beginning it also fosters and hopefully continues to do so, like a sense of community in which it's not like you're not just buying into a plan. You're buying into a plan, you share your location, coverage gets created in where you think you're signaling that isn't as good. So it's this feeling of like be part of something that you are no, it's not just your water bill that you just pay every month. And I know that it's interesting because the industry is going in like there is some back and forth between what connectivity is, and I do believe in transparent network convergence and user experience. But I don't think that connectivity and buying into a plan should. I think it can be much more. People can actually identify with their plan because they are part of a community they are buying into, and they are joined, and we do see that. And for whoever is in the crypto world, Twitter is X now is the platform, has been the chosen platform for many years, and you can see that. You can see community members that they are like pure subscribers cheering up on the successes of the network, but they're not building the network. But that's great because then you have builders, they're no subscriber, they're building the network for them. So it's like it's very interesting dynamic of creating this subsystem that somehow is feeds itself in that way, and it's
Yeah.
very interesting to experiment with, to be to
Yeah,
with.
you also see a lot of adversarial type of behavior. I mean, like a lot of people feel like they are fighting against the network, and that's not, it would
Right.
be not, it's not an ideal type of situation. Let's
No,
just
I
put
mean
it.
that if you ask 9 out of 10 if you like your service provider, for whatever reason, there is this concept, and I think it is rooted in that perception, like you said, about what they're doing with my data. They're only there for making money. That type of like fight the guy mentality, which it might be good better, wrong, there is always like medium. That's usually that's where the reality is. But this was built in a completely different way. I mean, the survey from our customer tells exactly that it is like we are very clear what we're doing, and if you want to join, you have access to this, and we are on a mission to make connectivity better and cheaper for everybody. And so far it's been very interesting to witness.
Well, I wish you all best luck, because it seems like it's a really good way to go. So we'll keep an eye on that. And Mario, thanks for being with us today.
No, thank you, Monica, for this for today. One more thing before we close that, because we haven't touched enough, I think we started with Helium Mobile as this MVNO that uses the network, but one of the coolest things that happened to the network today is that we actually have multiple carriers, MNOs and MVNOs, that use the network. And you can see that we today, I think yesterday, we touched 265,000 of those users in the US. And there's, again, blockchain, right? Those stats are public in our website, hellohelium.com/stats. But what it means that the telco industry started to play around with this model. And now you have MNOs in the US and MVNOs that they are using the network on a daily basis. We have this partnership with Telefonica in Mexico to do that. And so it's interesting how this, like in experiments that we started just with Helium Mobile, it started to be touched and experimented with by other carriers. So it's a very exciting future.
And we'll have links on the description of the podcast. So thank you so much, Mario, again, and thank you all for listening. And if you do like it, do subscribe to the podcast, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.